There, we are now live. Welcome to our live session. It is 8 o'clock in the morning here in Toronto. And of course, I am joined by Kilani, and Kilani and I are on our live session today. So that means that if you have any comments or questions or anything like that, feel free to jump right in and shoot us a comment, and we'd be happy to have a chat with you while we're live as well. So, Kilani, what's on the schedule for today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about a very important topic about practice. And this is something that is under practice in our world, and I think that it's probably one of the most important things to use in everyday life, but also especially in leadership, and something that we don't bring into practice a lot of the time. So we're going to explore that.
Oh, the power of practice. Yeah, and what I find so interesting, right, about practice, being a lifelong martial artist, and of course you as an athlete, in your volleyball, years, right? We all understand, I think, intellectually the importance of practice. We understand how, practice makes us better. We all, every single person I talk to understands that, it takes 10,000 hours of practice to achieve mastery. But then when we look at certain skills, like leadership, for example, which is a skill, and I'll ask my clients to say, so how many hours of practice have you had before you started applying it in your work? They'll go, none. Right? And I find it so interesting, as like we intellectually know how important practice is, but we don't necessarily always apply it. Right? What do you think, is the reason for that, like in your experience?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing that comes up for me there is like, I like the connection between the sports and the leadership, because I think that when it comes to physical hobbies or even in a competitive nature, we know that practice is important. However, when it comes to more mental type things or even leadership, we see it as a 0 or 100 thing. There's no, starting here and then getting a little better and a little better and a little better. The way I look at it is that 1% rule, is trying to get 1% better every day. I think we're not taught that leadership can be improved by 1% every day. It's either you're a bad leader or you're a good leader.
Oh, that's actually a good point. Yeah, and actually, and if I think about like 360 feedback reviews and all of that kind of stuff, there is a scoring system, right, where leaders do get scored by their observers. But the question, the way that the questions are formed, are still kind of all or nothing questions. It's not. It's is this person a good listener, right? For example, and then they'll rank that person based. Well, yeah, he's kinda right. So then they'll out of a 3 out of 5, which would be kind of average, right? But there isn't really kind of like where they say score this person with their kind of listening skills. Right, what score would you give this person? Those questions aren't asked. Yeah, so in a way, it still ends up being a kind of an all or nothing question. It's just to what degree does this person listen, right? Rather than what is the quality of this person's ability to listen? How much practice has this person really put into place with this specific skill? Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yeah, so
and something I want to bring in there too is that even though there are the scales from 1 to 10 of how good of a listener are you, I feel that, at least if it was me looking, and I think this is a common experience, that when we see a scale, anything below maybe 7 out of 10, we see ourselves as a bad listener. Whereas anything over 7 is, oh, I'm a good listener. And if you're a good listener, you're probably not going to work on your listening skill. Maybe you don't need to. But if you're a bad listener, it's kind of, again, that whole labeling effect. We label ourselves as, oh, I'm a bad listener. Okay, too bad, I'm a bad listener. We're not taught that, oh, that can be learned. I can find little things here and there. How can I listen better? What can I do to become a better listener?
What techniques do I need to practice?
Yeah.
Right, to become that better listener. Yeah, that is a good point. And it's so interesting, right? Because I very often have this conversation with my clients, right? So they're, for me, the way I look at achieving mastery, and this is just something, I've learned, with martial arts, and I've seen it, in years of training athletes and all of that kind of stuff, that there are these 3 steps, right, to achieving mastery. And the first one, of course, is studying, right, is acquiring some form of academic understanding of what it is that we need to be practicing, right? Because we need to know how to do it, how to practice it before we can actually do it, and very often we also need to know why, right? So part of that academic pursuit I get, but then the second step is how much practice are we putting in towards mastery, and then the third step, right, is around experience, right? Is the application of it. Bruce Lee once said, right, knowing is not enough, we must apply. And I see that a lot in, for example, leadership training and and even the companies that approach us, right, that say, hey, can you run a program with our leadership team? Very often the interest is only in that academic portion. It's almost like they're saying, listen, we just want to feed our leaders academically and leave it up to them whether or not they want to practice or not, right? We're not going to tell them, or we're not going to kind of put them in a type of simulator, right, where they get to practice these things. They can figure that out themselves. Our responsibility is done if we just feed them that information. So a lot of that responsibility of getting good at something really lies with the individual, not so much with the organization. And I always wonder if there's a better way of setting leaders up for success, right? Is there, can that be more of a partnership between the organization and the leader, where the organization could say, hey, listen, here's your avenue for learning, but here's also your avenue for practice, right? And so that you can practice this in an environment where you can't do any harm to yourself or to other people. And it's almost like, taking it to the gym, right? Kind of like, going to the gym and practicing bicep curls, for example, or bench presses, or whatever it is that the exercise that you're practicing. If you just learn how to do a bicep curl, right? But you want big, strong muscles, but all you do is read about it, but you never go to the gym to actually practice it, you'll never have that body that you want or you deserve, right? So like you said, that makes sense to a lot of people, kind of from a physical perspective, but then when it comes down to mental skills, and I hate using that dichotomy, right, of mental and physical, because at the end of the day, leadership is a physical skill. Yeah, exactly, because how we show up as leaders is going to make a huge difference. Hey, I see we got a comment from Tio Sean. So hi Tio, just saying hi back because you just said hi. Hi. Yeah, and if you have any questions about practice, Tio is actually heavily involved in volleyball in Singapore. So he knows everything about the importance of practice, because Kilani used to train with him many years ago with volleyball. So yeah, and coaches know these things, right? But it's more about being that in this context of leadership, or even if you're a student, or if you're applying anything, or even building a relationship, right? Like if you're in a relationship with another person and you want to make that relationship work, you are the product of what you practice. And I think this is such an important distinction that a lot of people don't really get, right? Is that whether you're practicing something consciously or you're practicing something subconsciously, you're still practicing it, and you're getting really good. So what I mean with that is that if your I guess area of practice is telling yourself that you're not good enough to do something, then you get really good at that too, right? And some people go through life being really good at being really hard at themselves. And they have set such high expectations of themselves, and because they do that every single day, that's their level of mastery. You know, if they practice that more than 10,000 times, they're going to get really good at it. So practice is not just something that we make ourselves do either. It's something that we're already doing, right? The moment that you wake up in the morning, you're already practicing something. You're practicing how you're breathing. You're practicing how you're chewing your breakfast. You're practicing how you're driving your car to work. You're practicing how you engage with people in public transport. We're always practicing, even though we might not necessarily be aware of what we are practicing on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. And I have kind of a scenario question here is, what do you think the effect would be if we have two leaders who are at the same level in the beginning, put them anywhere, and one of them uses that 1% rule of trying to just improve themselves just a little bit every single day, which, you know, over a year ends up being a 300% increase in their skills, over 300% increase. But and then on the other side, we have someone who also wants to be a good leader, but instead of looking at it from that, you know, 1% increase, tries to just be up here every single day and just tries to be the best leader they can be. What do you think would happen in each of those scenarios from leadership?
So yeah, and that's I mean, the scenario, and I see this scenario a lot. So, you know, many leaders that I coach, right, especially those leaders who are like looking for that next promotion, right, that C-suite promotion. You know, people who are like senior managers and directors, and like, oh man, I really want to invest in myself to, you know, to become that you know, kind of, you know, next C-suite level person. And the question they always ask me is, why am I not there yet, right? And very often it all boils down to what are the things that they're practicing, right? What are they, you know, how are they looking at their craft, right, from a leadership perspective, and honing that craft in a way that would kind of, you know, put them at that level of that C-suite or whatever it is that they need to be doing. And the ones that get stuck, you know, are the ones who kind of have this expectation that that's what they want to do, but they end up plateauing at a very early stage. And we don't only see that in leadership, we see that in athletes too, right? Like how many athletes don't we know, right, who kind of want to make really fast progress in their, you know, in their sports, and of course in this case people also in their career, and they really want to grow so fast, and then of course at some point in time, because they're taking such big jumps, they end up stagnating, they end up plateauing, and then they get stuck in that plateau, and then they burn out because they're like, oh, this is not for me, it's not working, I'm not growing, I'm not going anywhere, because they don't have that discipline, right, to just really kind of focus on actually slowing down and saying, you know, this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and I'm going to take it nice and slow. And then what ends up happening is a lot of these, you know, leaders, of course, because they still have to make a living, right? They're still working. They end up becoming resigned to the fact that this is maybe where this is probably my ceiling. This is where you know, this is going to be it for me, you know, until I retire. And it's kind of sad, but you know, I see that so often that, you know, that's the question that I get is like, you know, is this it for me, right? You know, or is there a possible jump in there? And the answer always for me is that I always give is it depends on what you're practicing, right? Are you practicing being at your ceiling? And if you're practicing being at your ceiling, if you're resigned to that fact that this is it and that's what you're practicing, yes, then that's where you're going to be. But if you're practicing being that, you know, next C-suite level leader and practicing the skills that you need, then that's where you're going to end up too. You know, we always end up as a result of what we practice, and that's something that I want you to think about too as you're, you know, kind of, you know, thinking about what you want to become and where you want to go, is that you are today, whether you like this or not, but you are today exactly where you belong. And you might hate hearing that at this moment in time because you might not like where you are, but the reason why you are exactly where you belong is because you are the product of what you've been practicing every single day in your life. Now, if you want a different result in your life and you want to go somewhere else, it just means you need to practice different things. It means you're not practicing the right things that are going to get you to where you want to be, right? So always think about, what am I practicing, right? What behaviors, what skills have I been practicing to get me where I am today? And certain skills have helped you to become where you are today, but there are also certain things that you're practicing every day that might not be helping you. Like, for example, being a slave to distractions, right? So we live in this, modern world of technology. We're surrounded by disruptions and distractions every single day. And if you allow yourself, right, to kind of be a slave to those distractions and those disruptions, and you pay attention, that's all you're paying attention to, then that's what you're going to end up becoming, is a person who just jumps from distraction to distraction, and you get really good at that. And the unfortunate thing with that, of course, is that you're then not practicing the skills and the things that you might need to get where you deserve to be in life, right? And so if I can make any recommendation, it's think about what you are practicing, and if you want different results for yourself, practice different things. Figure out for yourself, what is it that I need to be practicing, and just start with that. Just like people start a fitness regimen, they start eating healthy. These are all practices too, and the other thing I find really interesting, I don't know if you hear that a lot too, is people always say that's really hard, right? Practicing new things is really hard. What would you, as a coach, right? If I was like, but it's so hard, right? What would your kind of response be to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, the first thing that comes up when someone says that's hard is always to kind of understand what hard means to them, right? Because depending on your life experience, depending what you've been through, my hard could be very different from your hard, right? Yeah. And so to kind of explore, maybe first what hard means, and then second to find, have you ever experienced anything hard before? Have you done hard things? Have you tried something hard and succeeded at it, and to kind of find, because everyone at some point has done something hard and succeeded, and I'm sure it felt amazing, as we've all had that experience, and so to kind of bring that experience then into this one as well.
Okay, I love that. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Andreas. Is on the other. I actually met Andreas when Kilani was little, in middle school. She was at Stanford volleyball camp in California, and the first one I met Andreas, and we chatted for coffee, because he used to live out. I don't think you live out there anymore, right, Andreas? So thanks for coming on. That's great. We should definitely catch up sometime, over a call or whatever. So it's been too long since we last chatted. But thanks for reaching out. That's awesome. So thinking about that too, the other thing that I would like to add to that, right, is you're saying, have you done something that's hard before, right? And how did that work out for you, right? So what you're doing is you're kind of helping people remember that they're actually really capable at doing things that are hard, right? And that doing something hard is not the end of the world. Another question that I always throw out is what are you practicing right now? If you're practicing to yourself, right, that's telling yourself that things are hard, you get really good at that too, right? And how does being good at telling yourself that things are really hard, how does that help you? Right? And if that doesn't serve you, why are you there? Right? And is there a different language that you could be using that that could potentially help you, right? And so very often, a very important area of practice, of course, is our language, right? It's just the stuff we tell ourselves, and if I tell myself that I'm out of shape and I'm overweight and I'm all of these, and I tell myself that every single day, I get really good at telling myself that stuff, and after a while I start believing it, right? And that's the challenge, right?
Yeah, and we were talking about that a little bit yesterday too, with the CBT cycle, with the thoughts, feelings, actions, and that's also a lot of the work we do too, is is understanding that the way that we think then translates into how we feel, which then determines how we act. So if we're telling ourselves, oh, this is really hard, we're going to feel maybe not very good emotion, or I don't want to say not good, maybe not ideal emotions, maybe frustration, anger, whatever you want to name
Fear,
it.
yeah.
And that then affects our bodies, which, as we know, as it affects our bodies, we contract, that also affects what opportunities then are there for us. And as we know, when we contract, those opportunities slowly drop down. And so we see, if we're constantly telling ourselves that things are hard, we don't feel good, we're not, how likely are we going to be to take action on the change that we want to make if we believe it's hard?
And or even how likely are we to be able to see opportunities? Right? Because one of the challenges, I think, too, is that when we're telling ourselves these things, we start focusing on these things because that's what we're telling ourselves, right? And so the unfortunate thing about the brain is that the brain can't focus on two things at the same time. Try driving and texting at the same time, right? So the brain can't do that. We think the brain can multitask, but in many ways it can't. It can switch rapidly from one task to another, but it can't do two things at the same time. And it's the same that with attention, right? And I wrote that in my first book, right? Headstrong Performance is when you're selectively focusing on something, that becomes your world, that becomes what you expose yourself to, and also that's what you start recognizing, right? It's like if you're swimming in the water and you're always looking out for that great white shark. At many times you're going to think you're seeing a great white shark, and that's all you pay attention to, and then you're not going to see the turtles and the dolphins and all of those kind of things that are swimming by. Your experience of those is just going to be so different, right? And the same counts in the jungle, right? If you're always seeing a tiger or a lion, you're not going to see the cute monkeys and and all of these kind of things, because you're all so focused on where is that threat for me, right? And the same counts for our language. When we tell ourselves often enough, this is what I need to be paying attention to. I can't do these things, and I'm not good enough, and I'm like, all of that. Then that becomes our area of focus. And the one thing that every single one of us, what our brains love to do is to prove ourselves right. Right? It's like every single one of us loves to be right. And so what ends up happening is that when I tell myself something, my brain is then going to put all of its energy into proving myself right. It's not going to put its energy into proving myself wrong, right? So that takes a great amount of attention. That takes self-awareness. It takes reflection. It takes that ability to be able to say, oh, wait, let me think about this. Like, I've just told myself that I can't do something, but really, like how much fact is in this? Let me prove myself wrong here and see what happens, right? And that is a form of practice too. We actually, as we challenge ourselves, and in our consciousness and in our self-awareness, we can switch, the dialogue and the language and all of these things that we're actually practicing, simply by by changing that language. Yeah, exactly. And then when we change the language, we change our emotions, and our emotions change our bodies, and that changes our energy projection, right? Because at the end of the day, the way that we are connected to our world, and I know I'm going to sound a little philosophical to some of you, but the way that we're connected to each other and to the world is through energy. And we project a different energy based on what we think, feel, and how we behave. And and if you want to be going into the world being an energy donor, right? Kind of projecting positive energy into your environment. It starts with what type of language, what type of emotions, what type of actions are you practicing every single day, And so so kind of to bring this to a close, I really recommend that as you're listening to this, right, is to just pay attention to that, to kind of say, hey, yeah, what am I actually practicing? And if you hear yourself say certain things like, oh, this is horrible, I hate this, and this is bad, and like my boss sucks, and all of those kind of things, those are all behaviors that when we practice them often enough, we get really good. if I tell myself that I don't like somebody, and I tell every time I see and think and think of that person, and I tell myself I don't like that person, I get really good at not liking that person, right? And so think about whether or not that's how you want to be living your life. Do you want to be living your life being really good at things that don't serve you? Right? Or do you want to be living your life being really good at things that do serve you, right? And just pay attention, right? Pay attention to those little behaviors, those little things that you might be practicing that might be holding you back. Yeah, and that would be kind of my closing comment for today. How about you, Kilani? Anything you want to add to that?
Nothing in particular. I just think, if anything, the idea of changing our language to change everything else, I find that you can intervene that cycle of thoughts, feelings, and actions at any point, and everyone has a different point of comfort there. But I think the language part is really important, because I find that that's the easiest one for a lot of people.
And the most noticeable one too, I think.
Yes, but also a lot of times where, if we're feeling sad, we're like, I want to be happy. How do I be happy? And you're just like trying to shift from sad to happy. But it's hard to shift your emotions just like that, right? But rather you're thinking, okay, think happy thoughts. Change how I'm speaking about the world. Instead of saying this sucks, where can you find the good in that? And then through changing the way that you describe things, situations, the world, you're now also going to automatically be shifting your emotions, your body, and then your actions as well.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's the same as you. I think the natural tendency, and this happens in coaching a lot, right, is to focus on language first, because that's the most noticeable one. If you've never done kind of the CBT triangle, right, which is think, feel, and act, right? So what are you thinking, what are you feeling, and how are you acting based on what you're thinking and feeling? I think there are two places where we can interject, right? So the first most noticeable one absolutely is that language. But some people get so stuck in their language that they don't know how to change that language. And that's where I find it's such a great skill to then move that attention from the language to the body, right, to actions, right? If you then change the shape of your body, and you change how your body is behaving, right, that also triggers how you're feeling, right? So if we change posture, for example, if I'm a great example is if I'm kind of looking at you in the camera right now, and I start the episode like this. Hi. So we're going to have a great time today. We're going to have like this most amazing session. Chances are it doesn't sound very believable, right? But it also doesn't feel believable to me. Like the moment I'm in that posture, my energy just sinks and becomes really heavy. And so and then being in that heavy body and that heavy energy, it's difficult for me to feel any form of energy. On the other hand, I can also go woohoo, right? It's like, man, my day sucks today. I'm like having the worst day ever, right? It's really hard to feel you're having a bad day if you're kind of behaving in that way, right? So how we actually use our bodies can also be a great way for us to trigger ourselves emotionally. And then when we trigger our emotions in a different way, that then also triggers our thoughts. So if you're one of those people who's really stuck in your language and you have a hard time getting out of it, change your attention to your body and see whether or not by changing your body, by body language and your energy, whether or not that might actually trigger some different thoughts for yourself as well, right? So, and of course, that's what we're here for. If that's something you say, hey, I might need some help with that, look us up. Right, so level V partners or level 5 partners.com. Take the free assessment. There's the assessment that you can take, and you'll know all about your energy. And join our leadership gym. That's also free. There's a ton of free resources that you can join that can kind of help you through that process. We're always welcoming new members every single day into the system. We have a newsletter on LinkedIn as well, which you can also sign up for. And so there are tons of different information. Of course, our books, you can always look into that. So stay in touch and feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you for watching. And if you want to continue practicing, we've been talking about practice for the last 30 minutes. Definitely join us at Leadership Gym. That's basically just our place to practice leadership. And we practice all the things we talk about in these live sessions. So if this has sounded really interesting to you, you can message either one of us to get the link, or it's probably on one of our pages somewhere as well. You'll be able to find it, and if not, message one of us and we can send it over to you to get you in there. And it's completely free, as you mentioned.
Awesome, good stuff. We're here to help, right? So because for us, practice is super important, because we've both learned as former athletes and of course as coaches, that the importance of practice, and we apply practice to ourselves every single day, and I know how important it is for me too. Like, every time I get real, about my practice, and I get deliberate, I improve so much faster than when I just kind of take it day by day and really kind of don't get too conscious, right, about what I'm doing, right? So anyway, thank you so much for watching this, and we hope to see you in one of our Leadership Gym sessions, or just feel free to reach out anytime. Yep. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. I'll see you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.